Well, I will tell you, it hit me like a ton of bricks at age 47. And I have been pursuing that every day since. Getting beat down long enough that you start realizing, man, if I don't do something about my resilience factor, then I'm always going to be average or below average.
We give predictable outcomes. And those predictable outcomes come from learning the knowledge of what it is that constitutes the inside of a total human being.
Every one of us have an elite version within us. It's our designs.
Welcome to Embracing the Journey. I'm Lee Bakewell, and here we share stories of resilience, growth, and living beyond limits. Before we get going, make sure to hit subscribe and like. It helps bring these conversations on resilience and mindset to more people who need them. This podcast isn't a manual telling you how to live. It's a mirror reflecting the struggles and breakthroughs of others so you can see your own path more clearly. Today, I'm joined by Steve Harrison, founder of InnerAthlete.ai, and Dr. Gary Russell from Winning Profile. Together, they're helping athletes and leaders unlock their authentic design and what that really means for resilience, mindset, and performance. So stick with us, and the reflections you'll hear today might just shift how you see your own journey. Thanks for tuning in. Steve, Gary, thank you for joining me on Embracing the Journey. It's a pleasure to have you both with me this morning.
Thank you.
I'm very excited to hear about the work that you guys are doing together. It's very interesting to kind of read up on what you guys are working on and how this can change a lot of the things that I've been working on in terms of the cognitive processes and mentality and mindset and resilience. So I've got a feeling this is going to be a very interesting conversation to have. So obviously, Gary, I've done an episode with you in the past. We've learned all about your stealing of flowers and all those kind of activities as a child. So we'll start with Steve. And the first question I wanted to ask you, Steve, is what is most important to you right now in just general day-to-day life, personal, professional?
Well, Lee, I'll tell you, for decades, I felt like I really struggled with what was my sense of purpose. How was I going to live a life of significance? And went from kind of bounced around early in my career with different jobs and really did not understand my reasoning and my purpose until I was in my 40s, mid to late 40s. And so today, the thing that's most important to me is just waking up every day with a sense of purpose, man. It is, it's so exciting to come to work every day knowing that what we are doing at InnerAthlete and the team that I'm so blessed to be around every day is truly making an impact in the lives of athletes and individuals all over the country. And that's what gets me up every day.
Do you have that purpose now? Is that set in stone, or do you perceive that as changing in the next phase?
No, I will tell you, it hit me like a ton of bricks at age 47. And I have been pursuing that every day since. And so, it is, I tell our team, if not daily, they hear it weekly. My three phases or my three words that I focus on how I gauge my day is influence, impact, and investment. And so really every day I'm focused on, how do I influence people in the right way that creates a dynamic impact in their life where I can truly see the return on my investment in their life that permeates to others. And that's really what we're doing here at InnerAthlete, is really helping people understand their unique design, understand the areas of life they struggle in. And that's the joy of the journey for me.
So what would you say is the key difference between 47 and 27? What was the telling moment that made you understand that this was your purpose? This is where you wanted to invest your time?
Priorities. I mean, you really, as a young guy coming out, I think all young guys are focused on their career, on money, wealth, possessions, you know, getting your family, whether it be vacations, cars, whatever it is. My focus was all about me, and that can be very detrimental. And so I went through a period of my life that was very difficult. When I started, when I was in a corporate role and I'd had great success, and uh, got a little arrogant, to be honest with you, and thought, man, I can go do this myself and going to go start my own business. And boy, it was a decade of famine almost, and just struggle after struggle. And so, uh, but that was really when I started realizing that, man, it's about people. It's about giving back. It's about making an impact. It's about what's best for them, and looking at people differently than a means to an end for me.
Okay. So your investment in other people rather than yourself, you think, has been the biggest change from your younger self to where you are now and where your priorities are?
100%. And
Okay.
it wakes you up every day with truly a sense of purpose and joy, fulfillment. It's a game changer.
How important do you believe, kind of, even all of those, say, arrogant moments in your younger I mean, I'm not saying childhood, but maybe early adulthood. Do you see any of those threads resurfacing now in terms of your current priorities, or is it kind of like a checks and balances system that you remind yourself that you don't want to kind of revert back to that, but use those lessons to move forward?
Well, you know, it really it comes down to who are the people around you, and when you develop a team around you that is well grounded, focused, have the same vision, same mission that you do, it really allows you to be in sync with people and in sync with your priorities and your beliefs and your convictions. And that has been the main significant factor in my life, is building great teams around me that really see the vision and want to have an impact.
Now, a big thing for me in recent times is the idea of connectivity and community is a big part in how individuals kind of deal with challenging moments. So the thing you said there is about surrounding yourself with the right people and the good people. How do you go about doing that? What was your process to find the right people? Was it a little bit of luck? Was it through building more relationships? Was it just a deeper look within yourself? Can you talk me a little bit about how you found those people, how you built that team, and how you continue to foster that kind of community around you?
Well, you know, in meeting Gary, he shared with me a lot about myself that I didn't even know. When I took my profile with Winning Profile, it was very interesting. I wouldn't say a lot, but there were a few key factors in there that really were eye opening to me. But you know, I tell our team all the time, I feel like God gave me three gifts, and that is one of a vision, one of building teams, and a connector. And so really my whole life I've been more of an extroverted kind of guy, and but now I try and use that extroverted personality to really connect with people, and even at a deeper level than just surface, you know, really understanding how they operate, their belief system, what's important to them. And those are things that I didn't do early on in my career that have been a real significant factor over these last 10 years.
Was Gary a turning point in that by taking that look within yourself? I'm assuming he profiled you, correct?
He
So,
did. He did profile me. Now, I wouldn't say it was a turning point,
okay.
because that was just a few months ago. This has been a full, you know, decade of me really trying to refocus uh, importance on relationships and giving back and investing in people. What that profile did for me, though, was to help understand areas of my team that I needed people to be really skilled and great in. if it's outside of those three areas that I just mentioned, I'm pretty much a deficit to the team. So what I have done and what Gary has really helped me do is throughout the last 6 months, as I've really kind of gone around the country and trying to find the best of the best in their field of expertise, uh, really looking at what is important. Gary, what Gary did really help me do was understand when you're looking at a role, and then you've got a job description, and then you go and try and fit an individual skill set into that job description. We kind of turn that on its head. We're like, okay, find the people that fit within the culture of what you're trying to build, and then use their profile to really build that role and that job description around them according to their strengths, to where you can really maximize their full potential, where they can feel truly valued, and then they operate at a very high optimal level, which is a win-win for them and also for our company. And that is what we're trying to build here, to create long-term sustainability and a great culture.
So Gary, I'll bring you into that one a little bit. What do you notice different in, and we'll talk a little bit about how you guys got connected, and I'm sure this is part of it, but how did you see Steve before the profile and after? Is there any difference that you've noticed in the time that you've known Steve?
Yeah, well, yeah. The thing I learned today is that he was arrogant, because I don't see arrogance in him at all now. In fact, one of his talent themes is harmony, which is all about balance and all about trying to put things that fit together well. And that's the way I see him. I think what the profile did that I can see is really enhance. When you're a leader of an organization, you got about 8 billion things that you're going in different directions. And what the profile tries to do is get you focused on, I'll say 5, for like I learned in grade school. I got 5 fingers. It's easy to remember that. But focus on the key things that make you significant to others. And that's his greatest gift. His greatest gift is he has all kinds of talent themes that are all about others, all about things that he does with people, things he does for people. That's what I've seen, and I've seen it come out more and more over the last 6 months. When you don't know who you are, which none of us do, we do what we are, we aren't what we do. So once we learn the are, then we can start putting things in place. And I'll let it go back to you, Lee, but that's him.
So can you talk to me a little bit about the arrogance side of it then, Steve? What do you think made you arrogant, or what did you make yourself perceive yourself as being arrogant, and what do you think led to that? Was that just more of a driven mindset in the corporate world that led to that? Was it your extroverted nature that just came across that way? What do you put that?
I think it was the extroverted nature, but I think it was also a lot of insecurity, of not understanding who I was and not having a defined and detailed purpose for my life. I mean, everyone, when you're in your mid-20s, mid-30s, you try and make up for your insecurities by going overboard, and that sometimes shows as arrogance. But it also went back to the insecurities started back in school, in terms of even in grade school. I struggled with my weight tremendously when I was a young kid in grade school. I was the brunt of all the fat jokes. That was when Fat Albert was really big on TV on Saturday mornings, and that was kind of my nickname at school from grades 3 through 5. And so I really empathize with kids and with people that struggle with that, because I finally just had enough of it between the summers of 5th and 6th grade. And I just decided, you know what, I'm going to start running every day. And I did that in the summertime and lost about 20 pounds and started growing a little bit. And next thing I knew, I really enjoyed working out, and then, went into my kind of junior high and high school years, and my body really started to develop very positively. And so you go from being the fat kid in the class to being, in pretty decent shape in high school, and then getting involved in football and having success there. And I think it goes from, I think that was really the reason why it kind of went overboard at times.
Lee, can I add a point here? You asked me before.
Yeah.
The thing that Steve has is very consistent with a lot of successful people. He has an inner drive. Speaking of inner, we call it a high D. It's something that, if you don't understand it, can seem pushy. It can seem deliberate, arrogant, depending on how high it is. But everybody I've met, Olympians, athletes, great leaders in organizations, they all have a high I. They have to, because they need drive. So when you think back to when he was Fat Albert and he didn't feel good about that, he used his own internal energy to push himself in a different direction. The key is, when you work with top people like Steve, or athletes or CEOs, is that when something happens that they're not ready for, that's when you need resilience, and he has it. And that's when you put that internal energy in a different gear and find your way out. When I coach people, I'm usually dealing with, how do you find your way out? They have it. All I got to do is help them steer it.
Yeah, the interesting thing right now is there's a lot of talk around the England national team right now and Jude Bellingham about being arrogant and not doing certain little media duties which are optional, and other people have to do it on before him. And a lot of pundits are even talking about taking what is arguably England's best soccer player out of the team because of his attitude, when his attitude is probably what's driven him to levels beyond what a lot of those guys can do. And I think the insecurity part comes through it. Are you confident in yourself being driven the way that you're driven? And I think a lot of the people that I come across in this podcast are, when they get to that point of self-awareness that they know what it is that they want, they definitely become more confident to block out the noise. And I can relate to that. Is when I've stepped away from being an employee and starting to try and do things on my own, I couldn't listen to what potentially I could fail at, but I had to continue to look at what I want to achieve. And I think just having that self-awareness started to take me in a different direction mentally. And it's interesting you talk about that, because that's a big thing in England right now in terms of Jude Bellingham's character and what elevates he has the ability, but it's that it's kind of that mentality, that attitude, which is taking him to Real Madrid. So the curiosity, I'm going to say the curiosity, but the drive to not be, I'm not sure we can use the term Fat Albert consistently for this.
Unless it's me.
But obviously there's a drive there to not be, I guess, embarrassed or ridiculed for being, overweight in class. I'm assuming that competitive drive was started then. But what maintained that drive through high school? You said you talked about football a little bit. What was it, that competitive edge that kind of took you from being overweight to then being more obsessive? What do you think drove that competitive edge?
I think anyone with a high drive, when they experience a little success breeds success. And so once you start realizing that you have the ability and you've kind of overcome that barrier of the mental block that you've had or the struggle that you've had, then you just want to continue striving for excellence. And that has, it's just interesting how in life, though, each one of those, while, in grade school, it was my weight. In high school and college, it came with, how do I learn? I struggled with how I learned significantly. Had a sister she was excellent in school. I was not. I struggled with, I didn't even know, back in my day, they didn't even know what ADD was. And so, that was, I have always, in my life, I've always had struggles that I have had to kind of refocus, regroup, and understand the path to really overcome that. And then once you have a little success with that, it just continues to build and build. But it's really understanding, identifying what those struggles are, and really putting some focus on that to create optimal outcomes.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to help us bring these stories to more individuals.
So outside of being kind of the overweight kid in, was it third, fourth, fifth grade that you talked about, what kind of child were you in general? You said you're an extroverted person.
Yeah.
Were you extroverted then, or did the extrovert come
No,
out of it?
I've always, your personality is your personality. I mean, I've always been kind of the same guy. I was a very, very blessed kid growing up. I have a wonderful family. Both of my parents are still alive to this day. They're two of the sweetest people that you would ever meet. I had a great family dynamic, and still do. And so there was no reasoning for me. I never experienced any trauma. The only trauma I experienced was be calling the fat kid all the time, and so it wasn't it, but my home life was fantastic. But, like every family, there is not a family alive that does not have a level of dysfunction to them. I mean, we're all dysfunctional people. And so as I got older, I started realizing, I was enabled a lot. No, so then as you start parenting, then you kind of go overboard the other way. And so I had to rein back even on my kids. And so it's, life is fascinating. And that's really how I got, in high school. It's how I got once I started having a little success and started realizing, man, I'm a pretty dang good place kicker, and was able to really achieve some good success with that. And so it's like everything that you come across in life, there's going to be challenges. There's going to be uphill battles along the way. But it's really, as Gary said, it's having that resilience factor. And I did not have a strong resilience factor when I was young. I really didn't. I was weak mentally. And that came with maturity. That came with really, getting beat down long enough that you start realizing, man, if I don't do something about my resilience factor, then I'm always going to be average or below average. And that is, I tell kids all the time, if you don't know what you don't know right now, but what you do know is that you're going to have struggles in every area of your life. And the one thing you got to focus on right now is, how do you overcome that? How, for everything that you're faced, how do you fight through that? You don't go up to the wall, you run through the wall. And that's really the focus that, and that's also, we're seeing a generation right now that has the weakest resilience factor of any generation. And so that's part of what we're doing at InnerAthlete, is really helping kids, helping parents understand their child's identity, helping them understand their unique design. And so that's really, I mean, man, if that doesn't give you a purpose and excitement, I don't know what will.
So you say that the current generation lacks resilience. You say you lacked resilience as a young age. Do you see any similarities in between how you grew up, and again, it doesn't have to be family related, right? Until you say you have a very positive household, but you also mentioned you felt enabled as a child as well. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you see the comparisons, and then maybe a little bit about why you described yourself as enabled as a child?
Well, if my mom and dad watch this, they're going to kill me. But uh,
You said they were nice, good people, so
they are. Yeah. No, my mom was such a sweet, and still is to this day. I mean, her kids could do no wrong. Uh, Dad would always be a little frustrated at everything she would do for me, and so uh, it was one of those deals where my I probably was not a great husband start. In fact, I know I wasn't, and to this day, my wife still sees challenges with me on a daily basis that I need. I'm not nearly as enabled with my wife, and so those are things you have to learn, and so I'm really I just see these kids though, man. When COVID hit, um, and everybody went virtual, and it just the mental state of kids is in a tough spot. They're being hammered with Instagram influence every day, and thinking that their life doesn't matter, and they're not successful, and they're not a part of the group, and they're left out of a Snapchat group. And there is so much. Thank God I did not have social media when I was growing up. I would have been a basket case. But I really see in today's world, these kids are so challenged with all the influences that and all the information that's hitting them left and right all day, and it creates a tremendous amount of insecurities.
Lee,
yeah.
can I add something? Steve has resilience in his top 10 talent things. Now, he didn't go to Walmart and buy a pack of resilience. It's not how it works. I'm not going to mention another story because that wouldn't be funny. But what happens when we're born is that we have talent themes in us, and activation from the outside, interaction with other human beings, whatever's going on causes it to move around. So he's always had resilience, as all human beings do. It's where it's activated to land. So his experiences have moved resilience. I think it's number 8 out of top 10. His son has resilience at number 7. Now, I'm not saying he's better than his dad, but he's on his way. So I'm kidding.
He is.
But so we need to understand the principles here, that the youngest generation, I don't know if it's alpha or what it is, below 10, what they're predicting is these kids have no idea how to problem solve. They don't even know how to play. Play, as you know, Lee, in sport, is like oxygen. Kids need it to live. And if we don't have interaction and we don't have the ability to move these talent themes around, they don't move. Mm-hmm. And when they don't move, they show up as if they're not there. But they're there, just like blood, bone, and tissue is always there. But not everybody has the right blood combination to make it healthy. That's one of the things that Steve has brought to this equation. How do you put all this together so that we get the inner part of someone correct, so that when we put them in an external situation that can activate what we need activated? So he's always had resilience, and now it's just through life, it's come out. Will it go higher than 8? It depends what circumstances he gets in, but it's like it's in the dish. If it needs to come out more, if he knows what it is and knows how to use it, it can come out more.
Yeah, I'm writing a book on kind of these ideas of resilience, and the idea of the story. What I find really interesting is, obviously you said your sister was excellent in school, and I think you said maybe I wanted to talk to you a little bit about in school, your focus Was it the way you were being taught? Was you just not interested? You were obviously very curious as an athlete, found success, which then breeded you to be motivated to go. I've come across a lot of people. One quote continues to stick with me is that motivation follows action is a big line that I keep coming back to, is that people keep waiting for something to motivate them, but by you taking that first step, yeah, it was influenced by the external, I guess, bullying or exclusion of being overweight, but you took action to fix that, and then that led to the motivation to do other things and play football and find things that you were good at,
Yeah.
rather than waiting for it to come. So I'm always very interested in the differences in individuals and how they find what they're good at or what their strengths are. And I don't think you need to know that strength before you start to take action towards it. But when people fail at it, they get dispirited, right? And they
Right.
think not good at anything, which is, I think, inherently untrue. And then, yeah, the world of the social media and digital media, whatever you want to call it these days, everybody's looking at the success of everybody else. Every time I scroll through a feed now, it's about, I made 10,000 in 1 hour, or, and I'm like, surely it's not that simple, because everybody would be Elon Musk by now. So
Yeah, it's not.
I find it really, really telling, and that's why the podcast is the way it is in terms of storytelling, is I think we learn so much from people's stories and people's experiences, that by listening to people's stories or reading about them or watching them, it's a mirror effectively, because there are parts of everybody's stories that you can see in yourself.
Yeah.
And I think by doing that, you can then start to develop these traits that we're talking about, or activate these traits that Gary's talking about, and really find our true self within that. And we don't have to be the same, right? Your form of resilience can look very different to mine and to
Right.
Gary's.
We're all unique. That's the beautiful thing about it.
Yeah. And it's about understanding what makes me unique, which is the self-deciding factor as to how confident I am at what I do.
Yeah.
And I don't have the same talents that you have, or the same intellect that Gary has, obviously. So we definitely have a unique story. One thing I want to draw back to, Steve, is you said you got beat down a lot, was the phrase that you used. Can you go down a little bit of that? Not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but can you talk to me a little bit about what experiences you had that you've said beat you down, and then what was that kind of bounce back factor?
Well, I think my whole life has been just a constant journey, and that's why I love the name of your podcast, Embracing the Journey. And that's my mantra, man. That's what I do, is just embrace what's ahead. But, when you go back, like we talked about in the grade school years, and then you get to high school and you start having success. And then I had the opportunity to go play football as a kicker, not play football, but to kick the football at Baylor. And so my senior year, I thought I just made it. I'm like, here I go, realizing that was not even I had no idea what was in front of me. You talk about resilience, you talk about mindset. Well, I was fascinated with mindset and elite athletes. I got to Baylor, and man, these guys were a whole different level than I was. I was from a small town in Arkansas, and I'd never been around true elite athletes. And, I get there, and that's when Michael Johnson was at Baylor, and I sat by him in accounting class, and I'm going, man, this guy is elite. He is amazing. Track star. And then you see where his career went. But one thing I realized when I got there was that I truly did not have the resilience factor. I did not have the mindset as a kicker, it is all mental. I mean, it's technique involved, but there is so much in between the ears. And I'd never had truly any training on creating the mindset to overcome. Everything I had done was just intuitive. Everything was just me teaching me. And so I learned real quickly that my genetic potential was not the same as those around me. And not only that, but I had great capacity, but I was not even achieving where my capacity was. And so as I left football, well, guess what? Then I got thrown right back into the academic side, because now my whole life is about trying to survive the curriculum at Baylor. And I struggle, man. I studied hours and hours and hours a day. And I'll never forget my grandmother. She was a sweet woman. She was so concerned about me graduating. My sophomore year, there was this, and you guys may remember it, the older guys on this call, Gary and myself, but there was this infomercial where there's a will, there's an A. And I remember one day at college, I went out to the mailbox and she had ordered me those cassette tapes. Well, sure enough, I watched that. It taught me different ways to learn. And so, and things that I had never even thought of before. And that was one thing that really kind of turned the corner for me, was understanding different ways for me to learn, not the same way that everybody else can. I got so frustrated with so many of my friends there that they were so smart. They would have, these major tests 2 and 3 days away. And they were like, no, I'll wait. I don't have to study tonight. I'll do it the night before the test. Well, I was having to study a week before the test and still making C's. And they were studying the night before and blowing through it, making an A. And so that was when I just realized it doesn't mean that it didn't mean that I was stupid. It just mean I didn't process information the way they did. And so as I got older, I started learning those different ways that I am very talented, but it took me until I was older to understand that. And so really, that is why it's so important for young kids and teenagers and college kids to learn their unique design early on. And if their parents can get involved in that, and that's really what we're trying to take all this information that people are being thrown at left and right and really bring it to a concise manner for them to understand their child, their uniqueness of them, and helping that child also, and that teenager and even the adult, understand, okay, this is how I'm designed. This is basically my capacity. Here I am. So how do I maximize my capacity for greatness, to be elite? Every one of us have an elite version within us. It's our design. So how do we make each person, if you think of the word elite, I stands right in the middle. So how do I make I elite? You do that by understanding your God-given design and then maximizing and being able to tweak some of the inputs to maximize the outputs of performance every day, whether that's on the field, whether that's in the classroom, whether it's in the boardroom, whether it's at home in family dynamics, whatever it may be. But every one of us have that unique design in us. And that is what makes me so passionate about what we're doing, is because I know now that every single person breathing can have the opportunity to truly understand how to maximize their design.
Catch up on all the latest episodes of Embracing the Journey at www.basemindset.org on Spotify, Apple, and Podbean.
The one thing I wanted to ask you about was, you talked about frustration with comparison, right? Was that something that you got over very, very quickly or was that something that was kind of stemmed through, say, middle school, high school, into college? And I meant to ask you as well, what did you study in college before you answer that question?
Well, I studied business and broadcasting. I had a double major, business and broadcasting.
Okay.
So I wanted to be a sports announcer. I was like, well, if I can't be good enough to be on the field, I want to be calling the action from the booth. And then
in
in football,
football
football,
specifically?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I realized resilience factor. Well, what does that mean? That's going to be a long career of living in Davenport, Iowa, doing the weekend crew, for a small affiliate, or I just didn't have, I didn't understand how hard, or I didn't want to go through that process to achieve that. And that's where, and that just didn't stop in college, man. That went on through, a lot of my young adulthood. And that's where, that's why I'm just trying so hard to get people to understand there's ways to understand how you're designed much earlier on, and keep from having to do that.
When did you realize that sports announcing wasn't the path? Was that quite early on? Was that before your grandmother sent you the tapes, or was that after?
No, it actually, I'll tell you what, the tapes really did help. My senior year, I actually had a 3.6 GPA, and it was truly just by tweaking a few things of what I was doing, now that I did not graduate with a 3.6, I can tell you that, much lower, but at least I got it up there a little bit. I forgot your question. I'm sorry, Lee.
Oh, I was asking, when did you?
When did I realize it?
Yeah.
In terms of comparisons, man, that I struggled with that until 10 years ago, and I'm 56 years old. So that was in my, late 40s and or mid 40s. And so that was just something that, I think when I don't think people realize how hard, and I have a child that learns like I do, and he is brilliant. He's so much smarter than I am. He's launched 2 businesses, but it is, people don't understand really the stigma that goes along with that when you're in high school and college. There is a huge wound that you live with. And as a result, and it hasn't really, surfaced until about 10, 15 years ago when, and I'm not talking about for me, I'm just talking about in public forums where this is really an issue with kids and with people that the educational system has failed, so to speak, because the educational system teaches everyone the same way. And if you don't fit into that way of learning, you're out of luck.
Yeah, it's interesting because, again, I hate to refer back to prior guests in this because I want each episode to be standalone, but I did one with an executive director of Winston Prep Schools, Scott Brazilko, and their curriculum is based on characteristics and sustainable traits, right? So it's not a one-size-fits-all curriculum. It's individual. They still teach math, writing, English, but their main curriculum is about time management and self-awareness and stuff like that. So it is something that I know is being worked on in different sectors, but definitely not to a level that probably will help the majority of people. Right. So just to go, did you have a diagnosed learning disability in school? Is that what was happening in school, or is it kind of ADHD?
Well, it wasn't until I was tested years later when I was about 38 years old that they found out that, I was ADD and small form of dyslexia. And if I'd have known that when I was young, it sure would have helped.
But that wasn't around in school, really, right? So it was just a case of maybe you're just not smart enough, or.
Oh yeah, I mean, I felt like I was a complete failure.
Right.
Yeah.
And then again, that kind of comparison culture can be quite toxic to young individuals that aren't self-aware or confident in themselves.
Exactly.
And it leads to a knock-on effect down the line. So instead of sports announcing, just to kind of flip-flop a little bit, what kind of field did you go into instead of sports announcement once you
Well,
graduated?
yeah, I pursued a career in healthcare administration. My father was on the board of a large hospital system and happened to have a roommate uh, in college whose father was the CEO of a healthcare system, and also had another fraternity brother whose father was the CEO of a healthcare system. So I got to meet some amazing leaders of these healthcare systems, and so I ended up pursuing that. And then when I graduated Baylor, I went to University of Houston and got my master's in healthcare administration, and moved to Little Rock, Arkansas, and took an opportunity with the Baptist Health System here in Little Rock as an administrative resident and fellow that you have to, as part of your curriculum and your master's. And so I pursued that career for about 5 years. And I realized that job did not fit me well in my personality and my dynamic. I was sat behind a desk all day in meetings, and I always, early on, I really thought I wanted to be a doctor. Well, that I knew that wasn't going to happen as soon as I got to high school. So then I thought, well, I'd still love to work with doctors, and so I went into the healthcare administration field, not realizing that there's a very adversarial relationship in most healthcare systems between administration and doctors. And so I was like, well, that doesn't fit me either. So then I went into sales, and that's really where my career began to blossom.
Was that, I'm assuming that's because of your desire to be connected with people and extroverted nature, personality that you have, right? Is being able to get out there and talk to people. What were you selling? Just healthcare in general, or what?
I was working for a pharmaceutical company.
Okay.
And then I ended up kind of going up into more of the advanced biologics type, and had a great career with Amgen, one of the biggest biotech companies out there, and had great success with them and really loved it. And then in 2005, I'll never forget, the Amgen was Forbes Company of the Year. And the CEO of Amgen was on the front page, and the headlines were on the front page of that magazine, Forbes, Amgen, the biotech rebel. And it had a picture of our CEO on there, and talked about how many millions of dollars he made that year. And I thought, well, here I am, a leader in the sales area for the US for, the cancer side of this, oncology, and I produced this much in sales, and I only made this much money. And that's where the arrogance hit me. I'm like, I'm good. I'm going to go start some type of business myself, and I'm going to go build it. And that's when I didn't at that time. I ended up going out and getting out of the healthcare field, taking about a 4-year hiatus and working with some other companies, and really enjoyed that time. But I got back into the healthcare field around testing and genetics. And that was in 2013. And that was the beginning of where we are today.
So you said you took a 4-year hiatus. Was that when you were going out on your own and setting up your own companies? Or
No,
business?
I want to say 4-year hiatus out of the healthcare field.
Out of the healthcare field, okay.
Yeah.
And then what were you doing during that time? Was that when the testing and genetic?
No, I was working for a risk management company, a big global risk management company, and then also spent a few years in completely something that I knew nothing about, and that was electrical components, and more of an industrial type role in leading a sales team. But that was also probably where I made the most impact. I think that job actually really showed me that it's not about what you're selling, it's about who you're leading, and how you really bring the best out of those people, and in terms of, so they can be excellent in what they know and how they can sell. My sales team used to joke with me all the time while I was in that space, Steve, we know you don't know anything about what we sell, but you know exactly how to get our mind around and help us, help us believe in ourselves. And also, that's what I love doing. That was really the time when everything kind of shifted for me, and
Right.
really started realizing that investment in people and helping them really unlock their potential was a great role for me.
Yeah, just trying to fast track that career path, because I keep looking at the three conduits of influence, impact, and investment, and wondering where along that line you start to see those start to infiltrate into your professional.
Yeah, well, I will tell you when that happened. And that happened when, so I went out on my own, started my own distributorship in the healthcare setting, and spent 5 years doing that, working with labs all over the country and creating a lot of revenue for these labs, and they weren't paying me. And it was a tough business. And so I really, I had been introduced to this company, a guy that knew I was in the genetic space. He goes, "Man, I know you're all about athletes and you're always wanting to learn more about that." He goes, "There's just this test you ought to take," and it was. So I looked into it and I took it, and it was just a cheek swab, and it was called a fitness test, and it was just looking at the genetics around, you know, regarding sport and performance. And that one test, while this was 10 years ago when no one was even talking about genetics and sports genetics, and that one test really helped uncover a lot of my own health issues, but also a lot of the reasons why I was not great as an athlete. And if I had trained differently in high school, I might have had different results, but I didn't, because I didn't know what to do. If I'd eaten differently in high school, I might have had different results. And so that was the kickstarting point of understanding 10 years ago, that really uncovered some major health issues I was having as a young adult that no doctor could explain to me what was going on. But all this whole thing changed in around that time, because I was now starting to really understand what was the root cause of not only my autoimmune issues, but really understanding what is the root cause of any type of disease. Now we talk about that every day. 10 years ago, that was not being talked about. People thought I was insane, even talking about, well, I figured this out from my fitness tests. And I'd tell the doctors, and they were like, whatever. And that was also when they were wanting to put me on infusions on a monthly basis that I, would have all these side effects. And so, 2007 was when I took control of my health, and it took me until 2014 to really understand what the ground, I guess, what the foundational issues were. The foundation was cracking in my, at the cellular level in my body. And I found that out on my own, just through doing the research and talking to people all over the country about it. And so that was a real turning point of understanding, man, if I can figure this out for a guy who was just a dad, wanted to be there for his kids and wanted to maximize his life every day. And then I had a friend of mine who was actually in the NFL at the time, and he was a receiver, and he'd been in the league for 6 years. And so he called me up. It was through my son, when my son was interning with an NFL team. And he called me up and he said, "Man, I hear you're all into these sports genetics, and tell me a little bit about it." I said, "Man, I'm just at the surface level, but I can tell you what I learned about me. I would have done things totally different when I was young, and also in my adult life." So he was real intrigued by it, and I got him tested, and we got his results back, and he was blown away. He was just like, man, I've never even heard of this. And I would have done things so different in high school. And when I was at the University of Arkansas, I wouldn't have done half the things I did. But I saw him about 6 months after that, before he was going back to training camp. And we had lunch together, and he showed up, and I said, "What in the world have you done, man? You're lean." He was a slot receiver, kind of a stocky guy. He goes, "Man, I'm down about 15 pounds from last year." And he goes, I'm just eating and training according to my body. And it didn't really hit me then, but it did a couple of days later. And I was like, okay, so if this guy could make this difference at 6 years in his career, because when you're talking about elite athletes, and if you tweak those inputs, you may get a 1% to 2% increase. When you're talking about guys like us and you tweak those inputs, you can get substantial increase. But when an elite athlete like that saw such a difference in a 6-month period, eating and training according to his body, and it changed his demeanor, it changed his speed. He was 6 years in, he was faster. That was when I realized, man, if we can take everything about the genetic side of this and incorporate the blood into it and the nutrition into it that I've learned so much about through that 7 years of my journey and meeting with some great people in that space. Well, think what we could do in terms of really helping people at the young age level and even what sport they would be great at, but all the way up to people my age, Gary's age, just in terms of longevity. And that was what kickstarted the vision for InnerAthlete.
Understanding that we're all unique, that we all have our own strengths and flaws, but by really tying into the science of what our body gives us, that can help us develop a unique plan from nutrition, hydration, physical performance. I think you guys do work on cognitive development as well, right? With quarterbacks within the NFL and how they make their decisions and what separates a Tom Brady from. I'm not a football guy, so I don't know who the worst quarterback in the NFL is this year. But
I won't say who it is either. But we have an amazing partner with S2 Cognition, and they're really the gold standard for elite cognitive assessments.
So if I'm correct, that's the heartbeat of InnerAthlete, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of out of your curiosity of your own health issues, out of your own curiosity to learn how you could have been better. I'm assuming that's where this idea of InnerAthlete all stemmed from and grew from. Am I? Before we move on, so Gary, because you're the one that obviously connected me with Steve for the purpose of this conversation, can you tell me a little bit about what kind of the connection between you and Steve, how it grew, how it became? Obviously, I know we've spoke about on a different episode about Winning Profile and what you do in terms of, and you've already talked a little bit about Steve earlier on. Can you just talk a little bit about what stood out and what kind of led you to this connection and what stands out about InnerAthlete and kind of the work that Steve's doing?
Well, let me go back to something that Steve said about purpose. Mark Twain said there's two important days in our life: the day we're born and the day we figure out why. We're asking the wrong questions to kids, to people. They ask, what do you want to do? Who do you want to be? When in fact, we have no idea who we are.
That's right.
So Winning Profile is about understanding we do what we are. We aren't what we do. And yet everything in sport, interviews, and business is all about resumes that has told us what we've done. There's very little spent on who really are you, like you're doing with us. And that's because we have not had the instruments or the education or knowledge of how to get to it. So my my path was figuring out a way to get to it. When I met Steve through LinkedIn, I meet a lot of people on LinkedIn, and they're always interested in selling me something, never asking, what is it that you do? What else? How can you help us? And Steve got me to the point in the conversation where I said, well, I'll be glad to share you with what you're doing, but I want you to know, are you interested in what I do? I think it kind of like, well, yeah, well, why would I contact you if I wasn't interested? Well, that was the beginning of us exploring the idea of what he's doing, what I'm doing. Winning Profile is about creating assessments tools, if you will, to find out our pre-wired condition that we have at birth. So when I said earlier about Steve having resilience, he didn't buy it at Walmart. It's God-given. His sweet parents, they can be blamed for everything he is. And they can also be extremely excited about everything he is. But we don't understand what we're looking at. We think we do. Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book, Talking to Strangers, and the whole book is about we think we know what we're watching, but we really don't understand it. Our pre-wired condition comes through neurology, which is what I studied. My doctoral work was in cognitive psychology. So it really fit. And when I started looking at the way we were assessing people, it was all external, it was all linear, and I was not happy. I just thought, this is not doing it. So when I met Steve, and I didn't hear anything about the external, although the external's all around us, what I heard about was, let's figure out the blood, let's figure out the nutrition, let's figure out the cognition, let's figure out the genetics. I thought, and I feel even more strongly about this now, that my work is about the behavioral connection, is that once you learn all this, what are you going to do with it? If we understood the person who just said that, we would help them understand what are they going to do with it. Because our work really is about explaining behaviorally how that works. Now, behaviorally means, you still hear it today in 2025, that behavior is action. Well, you're close. You got 1/3 of the answer, but the other two answers are the mental and emotional conditions. Now, Steve, with cognition S2 doing that was the closest I've heard of anybody doing anything in that world. So that fits right in with what we're doing. Your emotions are all about your resilience. It's about how you feel about yourself. And if just resilience was the issue, we wouldn't be the most overweight nation in the world. Everybody would have lost weight. But no one really knows what it takes to pull that off beyond, Weight Watchers is pretty good because it gives you goals and it gives you things like that. We don't give goals, we give predictable outcomes. And those predictable outcomes come from learning the knowledge of what it is that constitutes the inside of a total human being. The other issue that really is critical with what Steve's doing, in my mind, is that medicine, surgery and operations and all those things, is all about a model. So I know if I get appendicitis here, I probably could go anywhere in the world and they're not going to go, appendicitis, what's that? Everybody knows what it is. And we have a model of how to deal with it. We can replicate it from one group to another. What I've learned in psychology, which Steve is answering his way and my way, is that psychology doesn't have a model. How do we know that? Well, not everybody's parents are sweet. Our coaching is all over the place. Our teachers, my wife works at a high school. You got some teachers the kids absolutely love. You got other teachers that everybody in the whole community knows, oh God, they got Mrs. Smith. And that's the difference, because there isn't a model. So this process that Steve is pulling together, in my mind, is building a model of the psychological and physiological human condition. The conditions that make things fit so that we can all understand the same information and we can develop a program, a peopleness of how to deal with that. I have clients in the NFL who tell me they were in the NFL for 15 years and no one ever coached them or mentored them. I thought, well, what in the world were they doing with you? He said, well, that's a good question. There isn't a consistency of how to handle people physically, mentally, and emotionally, and actionably. Steve's program, when I heard it, I was like, thank you, God. It's about time. I'm a little older than him. You know, time's wasting here. This really fits everything that I've been dying to figure out. I'm still working on it because there's so much to learn about the human condition. And these 5 areas, his 4 and winning profile is the encapsulating process, isn't the end. It's probably going to open doors to other things that we haven't even thought about yet.
Absolutely.
And that's exciting. That is so exciting. And our mission statement is lifting people beyond their own vision of capability. What a dream it is to be able to help the inputs to get better outputs. Does that help, Lee?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big curious factor for me these days is, and I hear it all the time because obviously I'm in the soccer world and in the coaching world and listen to a lot of information around that. And there was recent conversations around the wonder kid phrase, right? In terms of like your mean Lamals and you know what separates a 16-year-old there. And Max Dowman at Arsenal now, 15, just made his Premier League debut. And there's debates about should a 15-year-old be able to play senior men's football, senior men's soccer. And I'm like, you know, is a 15-year-old able to handle a stadium of 80,000 people screaming at him or yelling at him? And these guys are all talking about the physical components of should a 15-year-old be playing against a 24-year-old. The technical level obviously he has. But my question was more, well, if we're developing the psychological aspect of a 12, 13, 14-year-old, can we develop a mindset and mentality where they should be able to handle that if they are technically and physically able to compete at that level? I don't think there's any reason why a 15 and 16-year-old shouldn't be developed mentally the same as they're developed technically and physically. So the idea of that psychological development and tying it into your, I mean, I want to obviously ask Steve about the work with InnerAthlete in terms of I think you do blood work, right? Or genetic types and stuff as what leads to that is like, why shouldn't a 15-year-old be able to handle an elite setting like that if they're developed in the right way from a young age?
My first response would be your frontal cortex is not even fully developed until you're in your mid-20s. And in terms of your situations and your decision making, Gary's the one to answer that question, but I can tell you this 15-year-old couldn't have handled that.
Yeah.
Gary, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll just tell you a story. We worked with Gareth Bale, who was at Southampton in the Premier League, and then I forgot to sign the contract that told me the percentage I was going to get next when he went to Real Madrid. Tells you a lot about my profile. But one of the things that we wrote up in his profile and tried to share with Real Madrid, they weren't interested, is this guy is going to be able to handle the big scene. And now he wasn't 15, but he wasn't 35 either. He was beyond what we would call mature beyond his years.
Yeah.
But we also said he can handle 85,000 people, but what he can handle is someone, just one, getting in his face in front of other players. He didn't have that type of resilience. So we tried to share with him, this is how you should coach the talents that he has. capitalize on his ability to gather the moment. They didn't listen to that, and they went the opposite direction. We worked with another great athlete. I won't mention his name, but he went to a club where his presence wasn't able to handle 85,000 people. So they immediately, when he didn't play well, began to transfer him to various teams. The second mistake, this guy was not going to handle the rejection of going here, going there. And eventually he went from here to there, to the bottom. So I can't answer the question about any one person until we know them, including you, Lee, when I do your profile. But anyway, we were going to bring it up again. But we can make generalizations that I think Steve's comment about the cortex is really important. They may appear they can handle things, but until we measure everything, we can't answer that question. This person and this person may look the same, Gladwell's book, but they're not. There's 8 billion people on the planet, and our profile gives you a fingerprint, metaphor, if you will, of this person's differences between this person and this person, even though they look, even twins, everything looks the same until you start measuring things inside. Some of the things may be the same, but no one is exactly the same. So you have to really key it in on that person. When you look at women's basketball now with Caitlin Clark, I mean, I don't know how the league is allowing these other players to be beating them up during the game. If you watched any of them, I don't know if they think that's more exciting than seeing good basketball. So the conditions of the circumstances that they're in also play a factor. If you're going to beat a young kid up because he's good, which some older guys might think is a good thing to do, you could ruin that person within weeks.
Is that the work that InnerAthlete is doing, Steve, in terms of being able to? I think Gary said it about predicting outcomes or possible outcomes. Is that what you said?
Yeah. So part of the beauty of what we're doing, because if you listen about all we've talked about, someone could sit here and go, my gosh, that is so much information. How would I ever be able to even get started? Yes, while you're taking, 5 different assessments, we bring all that into one platform. And we have our proprietary AI technology that our team is continuing to build that is going to be some of the most amazing technology out there. But what it does is it takes the aggregate information and creates a one-pager report for you on your personalized insights. And so we can take each one of these assessments, take the top bullet points of action that can make the most impact for you. And then we also explain how these are integrated into each other, each one of these assessments and how they play together. That's what's so critically important. When you think about your DNA, the way God designed us, we have our God-given DNA. Our genotype never changes. But your genes are expressed in your blood that can be expressed differently. That's called your phenotype, how it physically appears in your blood. And your blood changes about every 90 to 120 days. So what we do is we take the personalized insights of all these different assessments, and we are able to then show some of the tweaks that you can make of these inputs that can really improve whether it's performance, longevity, cognitive, whatever it may be of what we're looking at for you. Because the first thing we want to know is, what are you trying to do? What are your goals? If you're with InnerAthlete, what sport are you playing? What position do you play in that sport? What metrics are you tracking? We want to know as much information about you because we want to build this dynamic platform of communication with you by understanding what your tests are and then utilizing that technology and giving you great feedback and inputs. And it goes back, it's just this constant communication to where we can then over 6 months, over 9 months, really be able to measure these quantifiable outputs of improvement. And as a result of that, as our AI continues to learn about you, then we can get into areas of predictability and outcomes, whether it be for potential injury, whether it be whatever that we're trying to, whatever questions we are trying to answer for that specific individual. And that's really where it gets exciting. This is a continuous journey with these people.
And you currently work with a lot of major organizations, right? Like NFL, Major League Baseball. Is that correct? You have.
Well, some of our partners do. Some of our cognitive partners do. InnerAthlete is just in launch phase starting this month. Okay. So, and we're focusing on, collegiate athletic programs and pro athletes. But we really have more of a 3-phased approach, in that while we're starting there with the influencers and the early adopters, we're very soon going to be going direct to consumer to the athletes ages 13 and up, to really help them in their journey and help them understand more about their identity and things that they can tweak to improve in whatever sport they're wanting to play. But that's also where you get the parents engaged too, to really help the parents understand more about their child and what makes them unique. As I talk to coaches, one thing I love to do with coaches is, as we're talking about them, I have them describe to me what I would call your most talented player on your team. Who is that, and what makes them unique? And without question, they'll start describing outputs of performance that I can see, or that you can measure. And then the question is, well, what are the inputs that create that output? And they're like, don't know, just God-given. And I'm like, that is really where we come into play, because we're not coming in to tell you to coach differently. We're not telling you to train differently. All we're doing is we are creating for you for the first time to be able to see that player's unique design. And then the inputs or the data that we give you in this very concise report will allow you to be a better coach, a better trainer, better nutritionist. And when the player is engaged, it empowers the player to understand his journey or her journey. And that's what we're trying to do in this world of NIL and transfer portal. These coaches, they have got to develop players so fast. And a lot of them aren't even focused on development. They want developed players already. But it's got to start with, you've got to be able to expedite the development process. And the way you do that is with data and knowledge about that player. And then you can go in and really, with Gary's program, with coaches, how do the coaches even fit on that team? How do the players fit in from a behavioral standpoint? Not only are we going to test their cognitive ability and their position and their sport, and we're going to have that full design for them, but we're going to also give them the behavioral profiling for what they really need to have around them to be successful in life, not just in athletics. Athletics is a very short time, but we're really trying to put them in a position for success for life.
There are 2 questions for that. So, and I think you answered the first one in terms of the youngest age that you would do these. I think you said 13 is where you're looking to go. Is there a reason for that in terms of a physiological development or a neurological development of the brain?
It has really everything to do more with consent and legal issues.
Do you think you could, with any of those guardrails off, do you think you could do these kind of analysis with younger kids to see how their cognitive development is going to grow, or is 13 probably the age where it makes most sense?
Well, you could do the genetic analysis when they come out of the womb. I mean, that's who they are. The rest of those,
that's the extreme Jude Bellingham pair, right? As soon as they come out and they trim the umbilical cord.
Yeah, the rest of those, Gary can answer on the. I think Gary's done some interesting analysis with kindergarten kids before.
Yeah. Well, what we learned is the cognition of kindergarten kids all the way up to about the age, I'll say 13, goes through pre-operational thought, cognitive operational thought, to formal operational thought. And formal operational thought hits kids around 11, 12, 13. So I've worked with some very talented golfers at age 11. And as long as we have a good idea that they have the language to answer the assessments, they can be profiled. Younger than that, I think we have to develop other instruments that would play into their development. They're not created yet. I think we could create those to give us an idea. But the biggest thing that I learned working with 11-year-olds is they were fascinated more with the process of what we were doing than I ever believed they would be. In other words, they knew there was something about them that might be unique or described as unique. As Steve would say, if your mom says you're really unique, you are. That's part of reality. But that's not what kids think until they start learning of what is it that makes them, I'll say, different. And once they kind of start getting into that, they really get excited. And this is why I have hope for the younger kids that if we just would handle them differently, they have as much resilience and smarts and everything that we would lay out if it's activated, if it's turned on. But the problem is we're doing so many things to not turn it on at all, other than clicking a button and watching it. That's not what we're talking about with this process. So around 11, age 12, one of the things that I would recommend to people who are developing athletes for, let's say, academies, is that you can profile Gareth Bale and find out what he's like. You can profile other people, and you can create succession processes to see how these people have the right talent themes to develop. That not only helps them, I'm not trying to discourage anybody, but it helps parents understand that Billy isn't going to go to Harvard at age 5 and be on the NFL best team at age 6. We have these grandiose ideas that, yeah, you're unique, but you're not everybody's going to be a pro football player. It's just not, it's not the way it works.
Yeah, it's funny. I started my 4 programs last night with the 4 and 5-year-olds that I do locally. And it always happens the first session, kids running all over the place, and it looks like complete chaos. It looks like I've never coached a session in my entire life. But I used to get really frustrated, like those first days doing the camps in California where I started with Gary. Is I would get so frustrated with kids not knowing where the boundaries are. And now I'm like, just go and explore. As long as you come back, you can go 30 yards that way with the ball. But I'm not going to stop everything, but you need to turn around and come back this way. But I don't know, just the metaphor of the boundaries that we try and maybe keep everything to a structure. And I believe that chaos can teach us a lot more than control at 4 or 5-year-olds, and they're able to solve problems if we let them.
Yes.
So instead of me giving you all the rules to begin with, I'll show you the goal to scoring and the goal to correct to defend, but in between, figure it out for yourself. I've started to try and let 4-year-olds try and figure out how to put a penny over the head. Because what's the first thing they do when they can't do it? They go to mom and say, "Can you put this up?" And I'm like, well, just figure it out. Until I had a kid that started crying because they couldn't put it over their head, and then I had to help them out. But
That's great.
yeah, there's something about, I came home last night to my wife and I was talking about at 1-year-old, we give babies or toddlers toys with the blocks and the shapes. And I don't think we give them the answers to that. They pick up the blocks and they figure it out. And then something along the line turns around at 4, 5, 6 years old, where I see a lot more of people kind of doing everything for others. And I don't know if that's just slightly off the top of my
Let me just add one thought to that. We now know, and Steve mentioned at birth, is that our talent themes, like resilience, begins very early, depending on what you set them up to be. So your children begin to demonstrate characteristics of their talent themes because they're your children. And that is something that parents should learn to. I mean, it just, to a parent, you know, my grandson comes in here and takes all the pots and pans out of the kitchen. Most kids do that. What this grandparent does, which is like his dad who works at General Dynamics, who is very theoretical and constructive, abstract things. I don't even know what those words mean, but anyhow, he comes in, takes everything out of the cupboards, and then puts it back in better organized than Nancy and I did it. And then he takes his crayons and puts them all, that the points are up rather than just in a box. Well, that's the beginning patterns of how people think. And the earlier that we can understand that, then we can create conditions for them to foster in it, as opposed to what Steve and I went through when we went to school, where somebody else said, this is the way you're going to learn it. Well, good luck with that. It didn't work. It doesn't work.
In terms of inner athletes, Steve, and the people that you work with, how many people do you come across that don't even consider this, like at the elite level or even at any level, like consider that it's not something extrinsic, but something that can be developed intrinsically?
Well, I will tell you, I have met some very fascinating people throughout the country over the last year. I have not talked with one person that has said, this won't work. This is a dumb idea. I have had people respond in a way that it's like, this is a heavy lift. Do you know what you're doing? Do you know what you're getting into? And I'm like, oh yeah, I've been working on it for years, you know, really figure. And now that is why where Gary has come in and helped so much is when you think about getting some of the experts all over the country involved in this company in key roles in our company, you would think that there would be a lot of alpha males and a lot of, you know, what I would call arrogance. Just the opposite. It's really been about building this team around the things that are needed so desperately for us to be successful in this major lift. And what I love so much about the team I work with every day is they can take very complex issues and topics and really bring it down to a level of simplicity. So this whole conversation for the last hour and a half has been around a lot of complex topics and a lot of theoretical, more abstract ways of thinking. What we're doing now is we're bringing this down and making this very, very simple for people to understand. That I didn't have that opportunity, Gary didn't have that opportunity, but that's our way of investing and giving back and truly creating influence around our vision and our mission to allow people to see that we really want to equip humans to see and feel the power of their unique design. And so as a result of that, you've got to make that very simple and straightforward for them to start that journey, or they'll just quit. And so the whole purpose of this is to have very open dialogue, to create the basic building blocks. And we will continue over the years to get more and more sophisticated and dialed in, like we're talking about on the predictability models and all that. But at the beginning, we've got to start at ground zero and take all this and put it together and really help people go, oh, An example, Sunday afternoon, I had the opportunity to have a one-on-one session with a college football player in a major conference, um, who is a great guy and a great player. He got his genetic report back, and his eyes got big, and he said, "Steve, this is mind-blowing." He goes, "I'm going to call my strength and conditioning coach right now and tell him he needs to call you." Well, guess what? I got a text this morning on my way to the office. He's like, Coach wants you to give him a call. So if the player, who is a 20-year-old football player, calls his coach and says, "Man, I've learned so much about myself. These are some things I need to be thinking about differently." I'm not telling him to train differently. I'm not telling him, I'm just giving him input. I'm just giving him information about who he is that he can then share with his coach. And now his coach wants to talk to me. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make this as simple as possible for kids, teenagers, parents, coaches, to where it just starts filtrating out, going, man, there's a different way that we can train. There's a different way that we can help these coaches can help their kids and be empowered in doing it. And that's the development process that we're trying to expedite.
And I think the big thing from it is that although you keep saying that you're not telling people to change the way they coach or change the way that by changing the inputs, you will change that environment, because there's a different focal point. There's a different awareness. I started this whole project because I realized I lacked awareness about individual people within the team. And I probably made assumptions which were detrimental to an individual person's development, which then affected the team. Mm-hmm. When I became more self-aware of how I was approaching certain individual players and their circumstance, I then changed the way that I dealt with individual players as well as the team dynamic. And then that changed the outcomes that I received as well, and changed the way that I was as an individual. So just by making people more curious, more aware of themselves, will automatically change their habits, right? Or change their processes.
It's about how they receive the information.
Right.
It all comes down to a willingness to receive the information that we give them. We want to be an extension of their intelligent staff, to say, here, we're the designers. Here's the information. You do with it what you want, but the people that receive that well, yeah, they're going to coach them differently. Of course they are. And yeah, those athletes are going to train differently. But that's not us coming in and telling them they need to be coaching differently, they need to be training differently, or we wouldn't have. We want to be true supportive of these coaches and nutritionists and trainers to help them be the best that they can be in their jobs.
Right. Lee?
What? Yes, Gary.
Well, just a quick one. We profiled Steve's existing staff, and every one of them has arrogance. Well,
I didn't even bring the word up again, right? Can't blame me, Steve, for saying arrogant.
Well, I'm playing with you because they all have what we call very high D. But they also have other assessments that profile their emotions besides the drive. And all of them are characteristically people. So if you have drive and you have people, and you have the ability to create this environment, then you have a team of people that have the best opportunity. And I said it earlier, I don't know if you caught it, that we spent 12 years of school, high school, where K through 12, where people are telling us goals, telling us. This is a process that creates outcomes. Provide the data, give them instruction, create the environment to learn, and they're smart enough to take this and realize that they can create different outcomes. Totally different emphasis about how you lead human beings. If you lead them and tell them, most kids, so you put your hands up against another child's kids, the first thing to do is push. That's what happens when you're trying to create goals for people. Don't tell me what to do. Help me understand what I have to decide to do. And that's his team. So when he said he picked the right team, we just profiled it to figure out, yeah, you did, but here's the actual data that will show you why you made the choices you did. Now we can add other people to the team, just like we're asking this young lad and his coach to add things to his team. Same process.
The question for me would be, would you be able to put that same team together 10 years prior based on your personality or experience at that time?
Zero chance.
Right. So it's a process of going through whatever you went through with health issues and learning about yourself and the experiences in school, getting to a point where you understand yourself to the best degree, I assume.
Absolutely.
What have you learned most about yourself, Steve, through the process of developing inner athletes? Obviously, I'm sure you've done testing on yourself through this, not necessarily as an athlete, but just to understand a little bit. What have you learned most about yourself during this process?
Well, I've learned that anytime you try to do something that's never been done before, you better get ready because it's going to be hard. And you're going to have some very tough uphill battles. And I think that's probably why my resilience factor is so high now, because there is no quit in me. Because when you, and I'm a very strong man of faith, but when God put this on my heart 10 years ago, I knew that this was his purpose for my life. And so there is no obstacle, no boundary that's going to come in front of me that I'm going to not run through, because I know this is my purpose. What this has also taught me is that none of this has been focused on money. I've spent more money on doing this than I could have ever imagined. But I'm getting that much closer every single day to seeing significance in people's lives. And that's what I'm chasing is truly, a friend of mine, Yogi Roth, always says, chase what matters. And that is, I think about that phrase a lot, because when I find myself getting inundated with different things, I have to stop and think, man, I'm still, at the end of the day, I'm still chasing what matters, because we're going to get there, and we are getting there. And so I've just learned more. I've learned how I think empathy has been real big with me, with talking with my team. I think just gratitude, waking up every day with gratitude is so huge. That's something that I missed for many years of my life. And just being kind to people, just wanting, just doing something nice for somebody every day. And over time, those just little things start becoming more interwoven into your DNA that really starts making itself known. And that's where you really start seeing traction in behavior outcomes that are positive.
Did your wife see the change in you? Have you you said you hadn't been a great husband, or not? What was the word you used?
She doesn't enable me like my mom did. Yeah. No, I tell you, that's the other thing, just having such an amazing supportive wife through all this process if I didn't, there's no way I could be where I am. And so, and that's really, a lot of this too, man, it just comes with maturity. It just comes with years of experience of going through your hard knocks. But I will tell you, if I did not have that foundation of understanding my faith and understanding that this isn't my company, I just happen to be managing it. And so as a result of that, I've just got my priorities in a much different alignment than they were 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I come across a quote yesterday, and I said this yesterday. I hate to be that guy, but I came across one that said, "Are you going to be chasing trophies or chasing the habits that lead to them?" And I think that stuck with me for the last 24 hours is the constant circle of it always comes back to. I think Gary, you said it obviously about goals and setting outcomes, but when people start to chase that outcome, sometimes they get very disappointed when they can't achieve that, whether that's comparison culture with somebody else who's just smarter than you. I've come across a lot of people that recognize very early on not to compare themselves with others, but to compare themselves with who they were yesterday, right? Not to use other cliches, but it's always just a battle with yourself. And if you go and you beat yourself every day, then you're always going to be better 20 years down the line, I imagine.
That's right.
So
I heard Brandon Alley with S2 Cognition say something that was really, I thought, so spot on. Because we were talking about the S2 tests, and we're saying, well, should these scores improve every year when you take them? He goes, that's not the goal. The goal is to understand what is your baseline of capacity, and then where are you performing to your capacity. It's not to improve your capacity, it's to play up to your capacity.
Right.
And when I heard that, we all compare ourselves to other people. It's human behavior. We all compare ourselves to the greatest of the elite athletes. But really, if everyone just knows their capacity on how God designed them to be, and if we can help you get closer and closer to that capacity, think of the impact that can make on people. And that's really what this thing is so dialed in to be, is helping everybody just understand their capacity and then getting there, or, get on that journey to get closer and closer to that. Like you said, just improved performance. If it's just a tad bit every day, over time, those decisions, those processes, that discipline, that mindset, that app, being on that app and having the best version of yourself talking to you every day, talking about your mindset, talking about what you're trying to accomplish, you're going to see improvement. You're going to see empowering of understanding of who you are and what you really can do that you never thought you could do. And it's really going to help you take the blinders off.
Last couple of questions, because I'm aware we're coming towards the close here. If you look ahead in 10 years' time, what do you hope that you can tell yourself?
Man, I will say there will be a book that comes out about this, because I plan on writing it, but just of truly embracing the journey of what this has been. This whole process, and the people that I've met along the way, and the huge obstacles I've faced along the way, but the outcomes that I'm seeing, and just the difference that I make not that I make, but the difference that our company makes with this information in people's hands. I truly hope there is a major book about influence, impact, investment in the next 10 years.
Do you see this work expanding beyond sport?
Absolutely. Yeah. The biggest expansion where this will take place will be at the corporate level and global consumers. I mean, this will be, there's not, one person I shared this with years ago, the first thing he said was, oh my gosh, your global addressable market. I mean, it's literally everyone that has breath in them. And so, yeah, we want this to get to the masses. We're not trying to beat people over the head on pricing. We want to get as much data as we can to really start expediting the AI development process, and also the development of players, not only at the collegiate level, but also ages 13 and above in terms of just giving them clarity and understanding who they are.
And then last two questions for you. If there are specific habits or lessons that you're learning currently every day, what are those? What's the most important habit that you believe that you have currently in your day-to-day life that is going to help you grow and develop as not just a businessman, but as a person?
I think I said it earlier, man. I have never seen a greater impact in just how I feel about me is when I wake up every day with gratitude. I mean, it really is. It's a major game changer. But it's gratitude of just being so thankful that I have the opportunity to do what I do. But my goal is that resilience factor goes up a little bit higher from 8, that it goes up to 1, because it's going to continue to get more challenging, and I'll continue to have, much higher resilience. But, I've learned a lot about myself, man. Just, it has been, there are things I've gotten through over the last few months that I'm surprised I did. And now I know that I can. And so it kind of ups the ante every time you get through something that challenging. It's not that I get excited about doing it, but I do embrace it.
And then last question is, if you did have to tell your 10-year-old self something right now, what do you think you would tell him?
Man, if I had to tell my 10-year-old self something, it would probably be become resilient a lot younger.
And have gratitude.
And have gratitude. Because I'll tell you, everything you're going to do in life is going to be hard.
But don't be arrogant. Don't be arrogant.
That's the worst thing you can do. That will create a lot of years of emptiness and frustration. Yeah, absolutely.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to help us bring these stories to more individuals.